My name's David Welch. I'm coming to you from Brothers Tech Center every single Tuesday to show you how to get your truck back on the road safely and looking good too. Today we've actually got Steve's 1972 Chevy Blazer in. We got some problems with our blinkers working sometimes. This thing here right is busted. Horn doesn't work all the time, so I'm going to tear all this off. We're going to find out what's going wrong and how to fix it. Stay tuned. The first thing I did was disconnect the battery at the negative terminal because whenever you're working with electrical, it's just a good idea. I'm going to take our horn button off first. You'll notice this is not a stock steering wheel. This is our sport steering wheel. We've got a lot of good looking steering wheels, so you might want to go to the website and check that out if you have to go ahead and get into this switch right here or anything else in there. And you got to pull the steering wheel off anyway. You might as well get a new cool one to put back on there. This is a little horn ring right here to make the hold on to the button and make the horn work, and it's just held on by 3 screws that we're going to take out. And then right here we're going to go ahead and we're going to loosen up the bolt that holds the steering wheel on, but we are not going to take it all the way off. We're going to leave this nut at the very top. Now what happens sometimes when people are trying to take these off is that they'll mess up the threads on the end of this, and it makes it very difficult to get this nut back on. So we want to protect those threads. We're going to do a couple of different things to do that. One, like I said, we're going to have this up at the very top, and then when we put on our steering wheel puller, we want to make sure that when we're tightening this down that it does not start walking off to one way or the other. So we have to make sure this stays really nice and even when we do that. So just give me a few minutes to get this on here and I'll show you how it comes off. Now these 2 bolts right here, they've got to be really nice and even in order to keep your shaft nice and even so it doesn't walk off and mess up your threads. Once you got it all on there nice, then you can go ahead and tighten the center, and that's going to go ahead and pop the steering wheel off. Yours might be rusted up. It might take some time. You might have to put some oil on there, all that kind of stuff. So just expect that if it is old and rusty. Now before you take the steering wheel off all the way, and actually I should have mentioned this before I went this far to be honest, but we want to make sure that the steering wheel goes back on in the same exact position that it came off so that it's not all crooked when we're driving down the road. And how we're going to achieve that is we're just going to take a magic marker and we're going to mark right on the shaft and we're going to mark right on the steering wheel, just a nice straight line. And now we know when we put it back together, we just line up our lines and we don't have to take it back off to straighten it. This is what it's going to look like when you take off your steering wheel. Now this piece right here, that's just going to come off like this. And this is a real common reason for your horn not to work, is that this will get just corrosion on there and such. So clean this up really good, this little copper brass ring that you're seeing here. Also make sure that this contact point right here is nice and clean, and this little button right here is nice and clean also, or no horn. Now I can take this little arm off, the turn signal indicator handle here, just held in with a screwdriver. Always save everything. And then we will take this piece out. It is held in by a few screws in here. So first we're going to get this guy off. And then there's 1 screw at the top and 1 screw at the bottom. I'll take the bottom one off first. And then just push the turn indicator down and you'll be able to get the top one off. Now these screws are very specific. I want you to notice here how it has the threads, but here it has like a shank down here. So do not lose that. Give me a minute to get these screws out of here, and I'll show you what comes next. The little hazard button here is going to have to come off in order to get this out. It's held in by just a real little Phillips head screwdriver, or screw most of the time. So that'll come off like that. And then this should come on out. Now it's only going to come off a certain amount because the wires that are in here, they're going to need to get disconnected and everything down at the bottom. I'll just get things kind of loose here a little bit, trying to pull it out, but then I'll have to get down there and work on those wires. So that's what we will do next. Now these are all the wires that are attached to the turn signal switch, and they are all hidden up underneath here. In order to get to them, I'm going to have to take off this little plate right here and this little bit larger plate down here, and then I'll show you how they disconnect them and reconnect them so you don't get it all confused. You'll notice your wires coming on down here right into this pigtail. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect this pigtail, but when the pigtail is still on, you're not going to be able to get it through the column right here. So you can disconnect these individual little connections and such, but since we're not going to be reusing this and I don't have to worry about it, I'm just going to cut these wires right here, and now I'll be able to take this down. And this gray wire right here, this is the one that is for your lights. And this also has just a little plug to go in, and you want to disconnect that also. So now we should be able to slide all these wires up into this chamber right here. Now this is ready to come out the rest of the way. You need to make sure that you push the button for the hazards. A lot of times it'll be stuck out, and then this will come off. Now you will have to encourage it from here and go ahead and shove the wires up kind of the same time. Don't get too aggressive with a screwdriver. You don't want to scratch anything up or dent anything. There we go. Go ahead and pull this wire through first. It'll just give you more room for the other ones. Make sure the end's not frayed and caught up, it won't go through. And then that'll come out nice and neat like that. We're ready to install the new switch. I just want to point out a few little things. Notice this little protrusion right here? That's going to go right into that little socket right there. And we have to make sure that our light bulb right here goes into the socket for the light bulb also. Now before we get this in, we got to get our wires in. We're going to install the gray wire first just because it's easier to do that way. And this will take a little bit of hunt and peck sometimes to get it into the valley and down this little chamber right here. Technically speaking, you can take this chamber off and such and move all this other out of the way. If it becomes difficult, you can do that. I'm going to see if I get lucky here and have it just work on out for us. So just give me a few minutes to run my wires down, and then we'll put our new switch in. All right, so I'm having a little bit of trouble putting the wires through. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take off this little cover down here in the bottom. Now it's just held on by some clips. So a plastic spatula like this will help keep from scratching things. The rubber here, you can just push it up and push it down in order to get the clip off. So now that that's off, hopefully our wire will be a little bit more cooperative. Now I'm not going to pull the gray wire through all the way just yet because I just kind of want to get it started. Then I'll get my other wire started, and then I'll pull this through while I'm pushing on the wires, and it generally encourages everything to go through. You want to make sure that if you have a tilt steering column that it is tilted in a position to where you get a nice straight shot down the hole there. And then this can take a little bit of jiggling around to get in there. Make sure these aren't bunched up or crossed over on each other. You want them pretty nice and flat and together as much as possible to get them in there. So this will take a little bit of dancing around. You might have to get like a little screwdriver or something to encourage it from this side, but in a bit you can get it on. There's a little bit of a lip right here that it catches on, so you got to get it up over that lip and then you'll be able to go down inside there. So I'm just going to need a minute with this. Oops. Here we go. All right. I'll pull all the wires at once. And then we're going to make sure this protrusion goes right into that hole, and we're going to make sure our light bulb goes right into the little receptacle too. Got to constantly watch the wires to make sure they don't get bundled up. And this can be a little bit of a tight fit. You'll also have to push the button in for the hazards to enable to get it in. Now, in order to get the light to go right into the slot that's a bit angled, you'll have to have this go in at just a bit of an angle. Once you get the light bulb in, then you'll turn it sideways slightly so that you can line up the screws. And you just got to be really nice and careful all the time. Occasionally pull in on your wires to make sure they're not catching up. And this edge here is just being a little tight. So I'll have this in just a sec. Now, one of the things you really got to watch for on this is the wires in here. They'll get behind the turn signal and you won't be able to get it all the way down. So you just got to watch those wires when they're going in. And now we're going to go ahead and we'll put our screws back in. You got to remember that you had two different lengths on these. The longer length goes in the middle. The longer one here goes on the bottom. And the shorter one goes at the top. So now I can go ahead and gently screw these down. You want to remember that this is plastic. So if you just take one of these screws and just torque it all the way down and it's not in there even, you can break it. So you have to make sure that when you're putting these in that you're just snugging up each individual screw just a little bit so that you're making sure that the turn signal is walking its way down nice and even. If you get it catty corner, you're gonna crack it. Now I'm going to get this screwed in and then I'll show you how to connect your wires down at the bottom there. Now, in order to be able to get our wires in there, I'm going to need to take off this other side of the pigtail. To get that off, there's just a little clip on this side and a little clip on this side. You just take that little plastic tang, move it back, and then this will slip off. Now what we're going to do is we're going to keep this so we have all the color code for us, and the kit comes with a new one right here. And what I want you to notice on these little wires right here on the ends is that there's a little tang that's sticking out right here. And that little tang right there has to go right into the right slot that you'll see on these. So in order to make sure you're putting this on correctly, you'll know a couple of different ways. One, these little protrusions on the end right here, it's slanted at the top and it's flat at the bottom. So we know it's going to install like this. So now we know our wires are going to go in on the bottom. And all we got to do to match everything up is just to match up the wires that are already on this old one here, or you can use what's on the what's left up in the column up in here. So all I got to do is just follow this right here. We'll put in the white wire first, then we'll put in the green wire, the yellow wire, etc., etc. So let me get that all set up. But you got to make sure that you're finding the groove in here for that slot to be able to go in. Generally, you'll hear a little bit of a click, and then you're going to want to pull on it to make sure that it's in there securely. I think it's like that. Yeah, little clip and secure. With all our wires on, we are ready to go ahead and plug this back in. It's a good idea to put a little bit of dielectric grease on there. Keeps corrosion away, keeps your contact up. Don't get crazy with it, but put a little bit on. And then when you're putting this back up here, make sure you're away from anything that's sharp, anything that might get hot, your brake pedal, etc., etc. And then on this right here that's going for the light, the kit comes with this little plug right here. This is a little bit different than the electrical connections you use on the other one, but it's basically the same in the fact that it has a little bit of a tang right here that's sticking up, and that is going to fit into the groove that is on this little connection. So you just slide it in. You'll hear it click, you'll pull back to make sure it's secure, and then you'll go ahead and put this in the pigtail that's down in the, that's already hanging underneath the thing here, and connect it back up with a little bit of dielectric grease too. So now we're all connected. I'll go ahead and zip tie this up a little bit later. Let's see what we got to do on top to finish it out. So our new kit's going to come with a brand new hazard light switch. You just put your spring in, you put this piece on, and then you just get the screw that comes with the kit also, and then put it right back on. Now, as you'll always hear me say, the devil is in the details. So when we've got this off, we're just going to go ahead and take a little black magic marker here, and we're just going to cover up any of the little scratches that have occurred over the years before we put back the rest of our components here. So I'm just going to paint this all up, so to speak, and we'll get all back together and on the road in a minute. Now I've hooked the battery back up because I want to test everything before I put it all back together. So that's our hazards right there. Turn them off, turn your ignition key on. There's our right turn signal. There's our left turn signal. So everything's looking good. Now we can go ahead and button it up the rest of the way. So we're ready to put everything back together. Now, I don't know if you remember or not, but when we took this piece off here in the past, it did not have this spring on here. That might be an explanation why our horn button did not work sometimes. But you definitely want to watch out for little things like this and make sure you don't forget this little spring. Now when you put this piece back on, make sure you get a little bit of dielectric grease on this and it's nice and clean. Don't use too much grease, it'll upset your contact mark. Make sure that your contact mark right here is nice and clean, and then this piece right here also at the top is nice and clean, or no horn. Now you'll notice this protrusion, and you know, where are we going to stick this? Well, that has to line up with the hole that is in the steering wheel. So what we're going to need to do is line this up with this piece here, and then we have to line the marks up that we put originally on our shaft and on our steering wheel. So we'll get all of those lined up. Just double check that. Yeah, I think we're good there. Let me see, maybe one over. Yeah, right there. Okay. Now we'll put our bolt back down and tighten it on. I'll put my miscellaneous levers and horn buttons back on. Well, we are all done and ready to hit the road. Now, before you go and order your switch, make sure you check out all your little handles and anything else you might want to get at the same time. This right here for our tilt column was broken, so we went ahead and got a new one at the same time. And now our job is complete. We don't have to wait for anything else, and we can hit the road and look good. You can too. You make sure you check us out every single Tuesday. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. And when you're on the YouTube channel, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, because next Tuesday I'm going to be back with more. And if you miss it, you're not going to like that. You're going to feel bad. We'll see you, man.